I don't know what time it is for you, but it's about time for the webinar to get started. I think, are we ready to go, guys? Okay, well, I'm not seeing a no, so we'll get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel, and welcome to the How to Teach Your Children with Learning Challenges webinar. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to open up the time for questions. If you don't mind, take the time to jot down your question and save it for the end. Or if you want, you can go ahead and click on that chat icon and type your question there. Although I probably won't address it until the end, just so that I don't get off topic. I tend to go on little bunny trails. I'm going to try to keep this as concise as possible. So here we go. Oops, what? There we go. Before we get started, I want to introduce you to my family. From left to right, you'll see Parker, McKenna, Brady, and Logan. And I want you to know that I'm really passionate about helping families with children who have learning struggles, because I have two kids with learning struggles. Logan, who is over there on that far right, was diagnosed with dyslexia, ADHD, and a severe memory deficiency condition. It was so bad, in fact, that he couldn't read until he was in 3rd grade. You can imagine the years of frustration and tears we had in our household. My youngest child, McKenna, there in the back, she also has learning struggles, although hers are not as severe as her older brother. But I am telling you this because I want you to know that while I understand each family is different and each child is different, if you have a child with learning struggles, I want you to know that I've walked in similar shoes as you. And hopefully, as I speak today, you're going to find some helpful tips that will help you in your school setting. I'm also going to talk to you about the math program that we use, RightStart Math, that has been our saving grace in teaching math. So let's get some groundwork laid about learning struggles and learning difficulties and some myths that you might have heard, in fact, over the years. One myth is that people with learning difficulties have a lower intelligence. This is not correct. Actually, 33% of these people with learning challenges are gifted. They simply learn and express themselves differently. Another myth is that children with learning difficulties are lazy or stubborn, that they simply don't try hard enough. And to be honest, to my shame, actually, this was the camp that I stayed at for a very long time. I thought that my son Logan was not trying, not focusing hard enough, when the reality was, over the years, my son Logan has worked harder than anyone else in my family. It just takes these kids a little bit longer to learn, especially when the material is not presented in a way that's easy for them to understand. Another myth, that children can be cured or they will outgrow their condition. This is another myth. The kids are not going to outgrow their condition, and the struggle will continue, but they're going to learn to adapt and how to work within their condition, I guess is what I could say. Myth, boys are more likely to be affected than girls. Actually, the percentages are almost even, 50-50. Sometimes it's easier to see it in boys, though, because they tend to act out, whether physically or verbally. Girls tend to be more subdued and compliant in their learning, so many times teachers and parents don't see the struggle that's going on. Dyslexia and learning disabilities are the same. This is a myth. There are numerous types of learning struggles. Dyslexia is only one of many, many conditions that can contribute to learning struggles. Students with learning difficulties and ADHD cannot succeed in higher education. That is a myth. In fact, they succeed very well. Part of it is because of their struggle, they've learned how to work hard. And so these kids, when they go into higher education, they're expecting to work hard. Unlike those kids that learning has become easy for them, all of a sudden getting into college and realizing, oh, no, I have to work. So sometimes these kids are actually more prepared for higher education than the standard learning style. Okay, so what are some characteristics of learning difficulties? You probably have seen this in your family. Your child is usually more creative. Your child will love to build with Legos or design dresses. They might be very good at a music discipline like piano or guitar or maybe even dance. Another characteristic is that these children cannot learn by rote, or it is extremely difficult for them. They can't memorize abstract symbols. This is why spelling words or math facts, at least when they're approached traditionally, are really hard for kids to learn. We have to change it up. Don't require your child to memorize things. There are other ways of handling learning. We'll cover that in a little bit. In order for kids to learn, they need to understand the concept. The concept needs to make sense to them. Once they understand the why or the how behind the concept, that's when they get it. So we need to make sure that we're teaching our kids to understand, not memorize. You've probably seen this one. The kids are more visual and they definitely need a more hands-on approach to learning. You've probably already seen that in your home. Children with learning difficulties tend to store information in form of pictures and not words. When my son was struggling with his spelling words, for example, I would sometimes write the word on the whiteboard and then draw a picture of what the word meant around it. So for example, if I were teaching him the word cat, C-A-T, I would write C-A-T on the board, and the C would become the head of the cat, and the A would become the body, and the T, the little flag on the T, would become the tail. And that way my son was able to take a picture of it in his mind. So when it came time for spelling quiz time, he was able to think of that picture and then retrieve that information. He thinks in pictures. Another characteristic is that these kids really dislike worksheets. In fact, many times just the writing element of the worksheet is difficult. My kids have dyslexia, which also came with dysgraphia. They would flip their numbers and letters around. They would put them in the wrong order. So they would spend so much energy, if I were to give them a worksheet, they'd spend so much energy deciding where to start their letters and what order to put them in, that they would spend so much mental energy they had nothing left really to solve an equation. Okay, so we briefly talked about rote learning and how difficult it is for struggling learners to memorize. Let me give you an example of how a child with learning struggles would see rote learning. And because most of you guys already know your math facts, I'm thinking, I'm going to change things up a little bit, and I'm going to give you some rules to this. Okay, since you're familiar with the 1, 2, 3, we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to say that A is equal to 1, B is equal to 2, and so forth. You kind of get the picture? Okay, so let's solve the equation G plus H. What? You don't know that one? All right, let me give you a tool. I'm going to give you the letter line, not the number line, the letter line. And we're going to start by plotting the letter G. Well, that's easy enough. Now we're going to add to it the letters A up to H. So we're going to count up to H. Ready? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Good. The answer to G plus H is O. Well, that was easy, wasn't it? Now you can memorize all of your math facts, or letter facts, I guess. I'm going to give you some flashcards, and I'm going to ask you to solve it, okay? So ready, here we go. What is G plus C? Anybody? Nobody knows? G plus C is equal to J. Okay, well, we'll need to go a little bit faster than that, so let's try another one, okay? Ready? How about E plus G? H plus I? B plus C? F plus H? Oh, come on, guys, you know how to get to these. You know how to get to the answer. You need to be quicker. Isn't that what we do to our kids? And we do flashcards. Anyway, I'm sorry, I got off on distracted. Let's try it again. This time, instead of addition, let's do subtraction. E minus C, H minus D, H minus F. Do you see a problem with flashcards and the struggling learner who can't memorize? Not only, I don't know if you heard this, and I was doing this intentionally actually, when I was showing you flashcards, did you hear the intensity of my voice, the pushing for you to go faster and faster? What that's doing to the struggling learner is putting so much added pressure on something that they already don't know, and they know they don't know it. So flashcards can actually be very detrimental to the struggling learner. In fact, the flashcard only shows abstract symbols. It requires an association between one symbol and two other symbols. And this makes absolutely no sense. Sorry about that, my phone. This makes absolutely no sense to the struggling learner. Not only that, but once the child with learning struggles finally figures out their addition facts or their subtraction facts, we change it up. We take that little sign and we use the same numbers, but we take that little sign and we give it a different look, and then all of a sudden we have a completely different answer. So what's the alternative to all of this? What can help the child with learning difficulties learn math? I'm going to show you some of the ways that RightStart Math can help the struggling learner by presenting some math concepts in a way that these kids can understand. RightStart Math is going to teach the child to group in 5s and 10s, and they're going to make it visual. Kids think in pictures, so let's give them some. We're going to start by having our kids learn to subitize, and I can already hear you guys back there saying, what in the world is subitizing? Well, subitizing is simply the quick recognition of a quantity. For example, if I were to ask a 2-year-old how old they are, what are they going to do? They're going to show me 2 fingers, right? If I were to ask a child to show me 3, what are they going to do? They're going to show 3 fingers. How about 7? I'm sorry, 5. How about 5? Or how about 7 or 10? Kids can easily show you with their fingers these quantities, right? They're naturally breaking up these numbers into groupings of 5 and 10. I'm going to play a quick little game with you. I've got a slide here that's going to show you a bunch of craft sticks, and I want you to tell me how many there are, okay? I'm going to give you about a second to look at the numbers. Are you ready? Here we go. Okay, how many were there? Anybody? Are you certain? Do you know for sure how many there were? Okay, let's try this again. And this time I'm going to split it up into groupings of 5. All right, you ready? Let's take a look at this again. Ah, wasn't that much easier to see? We could see the 5 and we could see the 4. The 5 has a middle. We were recognizing that immediately just by getting a quick glance. That's why RightStart Math uses the AL Abacus. The AL Abacus was designed by Dr. Cotter, who wrote the RightStart Math curriculum. If you'll notice, if you'll look closely at it, each row is split up into 2 sections, 5 beads of blue and followed by 5 yellow beads. And in fact, even the rows are split up. The first 5 rows start with the blue beads, and the second 5 rows start with the yellow beads. I know this sounds really, really strange, but when my kids were learning math, they were actually picturing the abacus in their mind. They would think of it. Let me show you how it works and how you would start off with this. We're going to enter quantities on the abacus. First of all, it's important that you start with what the child already knows. So you're going to ask your child, show me 3 on your fingers. And so they're going to show you 3. Then have them move 3 beads over. Just like that. Now, at first, your child may move 1 bead at a time and count 1, 2, 3. At that point, if your child does that, say, good job. Let's scoot these beads back over and try it again. But this time, shoot them over in one big group and 3, okay? Once your child has the idea of what the quantity is, then and only then do we start showing the symbol. Here's the symbol for 3. So much curriculum out there actually starts with showing the child the symbol. They have the child read the symbols, learn to write the symbols, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but you've got to start with the quantity first. The child has to understand the quantity before they start deciphering the symbol. RightStart Math starts with what the child already knows. Let's practice some more. Okay, can we ask the child, show me 5 on your fingers. Good. Enter 5 on the abacus. And here is the symbol for 5. Show me 7 on your fingers. Notice you have all the fingers in your one hand and only 2 fingers in your other hand. Now, can you show me the beads to associate that? Number 7. Can you show me 7 on the abacus? Again, we have all 5 blue beads on one side and then the 2 of the yellow beads. This is the symbol for 7. Make these quantities visualizable. What do you do about higher denominations, though? What do we do with higher denominations? We're going to start by showing 4 tens. I'm going to ask the child, can you show me 4 tens? They're going to scoot 4 rows over, and you'll say, good. For now, we're going to call that 410. Now, let's do this again. Show me 8 tens. They'll scoot 8 rows over and say, okay, we're going to call this 810. Now, this is a point of contention for many moms and dads. I've heard it plenty of times at conventions. In fact, you may even be on the other side of that computer resisting me at this approach right now. I can hear some of you say, my child already knows the traditional names. Why do I need to call them these numbers as tens? Actually, it will just confuse my already struggling child. Well, here's the problem with that thought. If a child looks at the number 14, they are going to think of them as 14 individual ones. Think about it. When they're counting to 14, they're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. They're thinking of them as individual ones and not in groupings of tens and 4. The place value pattern of the breakdown of tens and ones is hidden in the term 14. They don't see the pattern of place value. In RightStart Math, we're going to teach place value terminology. 11 is 10-1, 12 is 10-2, 10-3, 10-4, 10-5, 10-6, 10-7, 10-8, 10-9, 2-10. Just as reciting the alphabet does not teach reading, counting does not teach arithmetic. My kids learn the alphabet, probably very similar to yours, singing the alphabet song, the ABC song. However, even after my kids learned that song, they still couldn't spell or read the word mom, right? My kids needed to learn the sound. They needed to learn the function of the letter prior to reading and spelling. I taught them that the letter M makes the sound and that the letter O makes the ah sound. Putting those sounds together creates the word mom. Once they learned the function of the letters, they could then read and spell. And the same thing goes with numbers. They need to understand the name of the quantity before they understand how everything works together. Now, don't worry, your child is not going to be a 23-year-old going to your parents saying, I'm 210-3. They're going to learn the traditional way of saying the numbers. But by learning the place value way of naming numbers, that will really, really, really go a long way in helping them understand place value as a whole. So let's apply with what we've learned so far on the abacus, because this is really where your struggling learner is going to begin to understand how place value works and how to begin to develop mental pictures of the concept. So here we have an abacus with 2, 10, 20, but 2 10 beads on the abacus. You're going to ask your child to say 210. Your struggling learner will need to see the beads and to hear their own voice saying it. This really does help in their retention of these concepts. So let's take a step back here. Here we have this abacus. The child has moved the beads over. That's kinesthetic learning. They see the abacus. That's visual learning. And then they're just saying 210. That's auditory learning. As you teach, regardless of the subject, as you teach, include as many elements as possible in your teaching: auditory, kinesthetic, visual. The more they do, the better your learner will learn. Okay, so we've already talked about saying the number 210. Once they get that, then we're going to show them the place value card. Actually, they're going to pull out the place value card. And you're going to say, this is how we write 210. And again, have them say that, 210. Notice that as I was showing you that, I was highlighting the syllables when I was saying the term. When you teach your child, make sure you point to each of the digits as you or your child say each syllable. This way, your child learns that tens have 2 digits, just as it has 2 syllables. Let's do another one. This one is 310. Have your child say 310. 310, showing the syllables. How about this one? 310-7. We're going to pull 2 place value cards. We're going to pull the 310 place value card, and we're also going to pull the 7 place value card. Have your child say it, and then you're going to say, when we write this number, we're going to squish those numbers together, and that's how we would write the number, 310-7. Make sure that the place value cards are aligned up on the right-hand side. How about this one? All of the beads on the abacus total 100 beads. When we first introduce this to the child, it's going to be known as their 10 tens. And we're going to identify that as 10 tens. However, very shortly after that, we're going to introduce the term 100. And again, we're going to use the syllables, 100. 3 syllables for 3 digits. Help your child see and hear place value. Okay, we've already talked about grouping and we've talked about visualizing. Let's talk about some strategies. And I'm going to show you what I mean about teaching strategies. We're going to start with adding. We're going to add 4 plus 3. How do we add on the abacus? We're going to scoot 4 beads over, and then we're going to scoot 3 more beads over. We're adding another 3, and then we're going to squish them together. I always use voice inflection with my kids. Sorry about that. And how many beads do we have now? We have 7. You can see that. It's easy to see that quantity. I'm going to take a side step here for a second. Let your child use the abacus until they develop the mental picture in their mind. Make sure they can picture the beads as they're moving them in their head. I'm going to give you an example. One day I was working with my daughter on double-digit mental addition. Now remember, she's a struggling learner, so it takes her a little bit longer to calculate. This one particular day, I gave her an equation, and she stopped, and she just kind of stared off into space. Well, and I give her a little bit of time, but she was really taking a long time. And just so you know, she has ADHD, so sometimes her mind just kind of drifts off into some wonderland somewhere. So to bring her back to my world, I asked her, I said, do you want me to go ahead and get the abacus for you, McKenna? And she looked at me, she put her hands on her hips, and she said, Mom, I already have the abacus. It's right here. And then she pointed to her mind, and I laughed. But you can see that she has the abacus. In fact, when she was staring off into space, she was picturing the beads moving. By the way, she was able to get the equation correct. Proud mama moment. Had to share that. All right, so give your kids strategies. Strategies is a powerful representation, a powerful strategy for all kids. And for the struggling learner, it is desperately needed. I'm going to show you a couple strategies that RightStart Math uses in their curriculum, ones that we use in our home. This one is called Complete the 10, and actually in my home we called it the Magic 9, because we always like to change up terms and make it exciting. Math should be exciting, right? So here's the equation, 9 plus 5. What we're going to do is we're going to put 9 beads on the top row and 5 beads on the second wire. Okay, now have your child take that one remaining bead over there on the top row and exchange it for one of the beads on the next wire. And we're going to switch places, and we always did it in a fun way. I always said, on your mark, get set, trade. And there you go. Now, how many beads are on that abacus? Isn't it easier to see, oops, easier to see the full 10 and the 4? That would be 14. Let's do another one. 9 plus 7. We're going to enter 9 on that top wire, 7 on the second wire. We're going to exchange those beads. On your mark, get set, go. And we can see that we have a full 10 and a 6. That would be 16. Another strategy is the 2 5s. And I'm going to demonstrate this with the equation 8 plus 6. This was actually my favorite and one that McKenna uses all the time. In fact, she just used it yesterday in our math class. We're going to enter 8 on the top wire, and 6 on the second row. Do you see the two 5s? What is 5 plus 5? 10. Okay, how many yellow beads do we have left over? 4. How easy is that to see? 14. Give your child some visualization. RightStart Math teaches a variety of strategies for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. They do this to help your child learn, but more importantly, understand math facts and how they work. Multiplying on the AL Abacus. Ugh. For most people, multiplication is quite difficult. Here the kids are, they've finished learning their addition facts, they've finished learning their subtraction facts, they're confident. Now all of a sudden we're completely changing the playing field and we work on multiplication. I'm going to show you how multiplication on the AL Abacus works, and hopefully you'll get an understanding how this can help your child understand multiplication. We're going to start, and I always like to show this particular one. This is 4 rows of 6s, or 6 times 4, or 6 taken 4 times. There's several things that you can see through this. One, you're seeing that you're adding 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6, right? Extended adding. You can also see the total. We have 2 sets of 5, or 2 sets of 10, 5 and 5, plus 5 and 5, and then an extra 4 remaining. So we have 24. So 6 times 4 is 24. They're able to see that. Now, the reason why I like to show this particular slide is because my son Parker, we were working on, I have a story about him. One day we were working on our 6s. We only spent like 5 minutes maybe on it. We went through all of our multiples of 6. Well, the next day came along, and I wanted to review what he remembered and see if he could remember anything. So I asked him, what is 6 times 4? Well, one thing you need to know about Parker is he's kind of lazy, and unless you're really pulling it out of him, he's really not going to work hard on anything. So, of course, his answer when I asked him what 6 times 4 was, I don't know. So I said, okay. I'm realizing that he's going to play that game with me. I thought, okay, well, what can you do to figure out what 6 times 4 was? And he stopped for a second, and he said, well, wait a minute. I know what 6 times 2 is. That's 12. So I need 2 sets of those. So 12 plus 12, 24. Okay, 6 times 4 is 24. And I'll tell you, that's almost verbatim what he said, by the way. Now, my question to you is this. Did he know 6 times 4 is 24 because he had it memorized? No. He knew what 6 times 4 was because he knew how multiplication works. 7 times 7. This is another one that I love to share. My struggling learner, Logan, really struggled with multiplication. Mostly, what's interesting is he never could get 7 times 7. He struggled and struggled and struggled for a long time with that one. One day, he was doing a quick little review worksheet, and this equation came up, and he threw his head back, and he says, ugh, I hate this one. Well, I went over from my desk to check it out and see what he was talking about, and I saw the 7 times 7 and knew he had struggled with it. And I said, you know what? Let's get our abacus out and let's calculate this out and nail this for once for all. So we get the abacus out and we're calculating. We knew that all of the blue beads were 25. We added to that another 10, which took it to 35, and another 10, which took it to 45, and then the remaining 4 beads, which took it to 49. And I said, okay, great. 7 times 7 is 49. Now I want you to look at these beads and tell me what you think they look like. What's the pattern? What do you see with that? And he goes, actually, that kind of looks like a flag. And I said, you're right. That does look like a flag. Okay, so I want you to take a picture of that in your mind. And of course, he rolls his eyes at me, but he evidently took a picture of it with his mind. He blinked anyway, I'll tell you that. So anyway, a couple days later, maybe it was a week or 2 later, he was working on another worksheet, and lo and behold comes this 7 times 7, and I heard him like, ugh, I hate this one. So once again, I walked over to see what he was talking about, and I saw that it was 7 times 7. And he says, you know, Mom, I just don't know this one. I said, yes, you do. You know this one. And I said, do you remember the picture you took of it the other day? And he stopped, he looked up, and he says, oh, the flag, 49, just like that, just like that. He had the picture. He had what he needed to do to learn, to recall that particular math fact. RightStart Math teaches how you can teach your child to learn math, how it will give you the tools that you need, the manipulatives you need, the strategies, the helpful hints that your struggling learner needs to have. But the really cool thing is you don't actually have to write the lesson plans. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already written for you. All you need to do is open up the book and follow along. The strategies are already laid out for you. There's tons of pictures so you can see how to use the manipulatives. Your struggling learner can learn math. They can be confident in math. And I'm not going to promise you that there's not going to be some days of frustration or that your child won't struggle with a math concept or two. But the good news is your child will learn them. There is a way that works. I have used RightStart Math for more than 12 years now. I can't believe it. And I can testify to you that whether my child is a strong learner, which I have a couple of those in my family, or a struggling learner, that RightStart Math works. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to offer another webinar on how to teach a struggling learner. If you found this one helpful, I hope that you come back and get some more ideas on how to teach math to your struggling learner. And then here, I'm going to open it up for some questions. But some of you may have some questions that you're not comfortable asking in public. So I included my email here, info@rightstartmath.com. Please feel free to email me. I'll be happy to respond to you and can answer your questions. For those of you who are not sticking around for the question and answer time, I want to thank you for attending the webinar. And again, contact RightStart Math with any questions you have. All right.